What's up guys, T here, back with a little bit more HOI4. Today we're going to be talking about the political screen. As you can see here, this is where you obviously know you have your national focus. And that's going to be kind of what you're planning on doing with your country's direction. But today we're going to be focusing a little bit more on the stuff down here, going into detail with that. So what you're seeing right here is your democratic, or your party, your political party that your country is. So brown is fascist, blue is democratic, red is communist, and white is not aligned. To give you an example, Turkey, Romania, some of the smaller countries, usually smaller countries, are not aligned. And you can kind of influence them to become your side, but that's another video. That's diplomacy. But going into more detail, important part is the national spirit. There are going to be a bunch of buffs or nerfs for your country depending on which country you are and what time of the year it is and what focuses you have researched. You can see your leader, you can see your ideology, no elections. A huge part of what this screen depends upon is actually this political power item up here. What this is telling you how much banked political power you have, and then how much you're getting per day. So as you can see right now, we're getting +2 political power per day. And then what we would be getting 3, but we're losing 1 per day to researching the Rhineland. So any national focus you do is going to cost you 1 per day. That's just a basic thing. And then also what will modify this number of +2 per day is any kind of subversive diplomatic actions you're taking in other countries that'll also affect it. Those cost political points per day as well. So now let's get down into these. These 3 right here are kind of your main 3. These are going to function the same for every country, whereas these are going to vary per country and strategy. So we'll get into those in a minute, but we're going to start with these big 3 up here, I like to call them. So this is just conscription laws. Basically it affects what your manpower is, your recruitable manpower. So right here this shows I have 1.2 million men available to recruit to the army. It also shows you that you have this many men in the Army and the Air Force and the Navy, and it also shows that we have a 2K growth in recruitable manpower per month, as well as civilian growth, but that's not as important. So basically what you're doing with this screen is you get to pick what percentage of your total country's manpower is available for the Army to be recruited, and based on that there's different once you get to the higher percentages, there's some debuffs or nerfs to your abilities. So if, like, for example, once we get to extensive conscription at 5% recruitable population, it takes 10% longer to train new divisions. Think of that as, oh, there's going to be certain resistance people aren't going to want to fight. You're asking people to fight that maybe they don't believe in it due to religious purposes, or maybe it's just the more rebellious ones that wouldn't have ever volunteered because they don't believe in it. Just things like that. And then as you move further, you get to service, you get the worse, you get even more training time, and then you start to hit your factory output because you're pulling good men out of the factories to serve in the field. And then it just gets even worse as you move through, as you're losing more and more manpower from the home front, moving into the front line. You get these really negative nerfs to your production and to your training time. So you get more men, but as you start getting into questionable recruiting methods, you do have some costs to it. Next is limited exports. Limited exports, I just read that right there. No, the trade screen. That's kind of funny. This is basically makes up, it consists of 2 parts. 1, how many resources you're sending to the market, and 2, what kind of buff you're getting because of those resources. So free trade is sending the most export, then next is limited exports, and then closed economy. Obviously you're not sending any. So when you're sending more, you get better buffs to your production, your construction speed, your factory output, and you also get a buff to your research time, which is really nice. But the thing is, what you got to keep an eye on, the more resources you're sending to market, these are just resources that your country owns. If you're sending 80% of your resources and you need to use 50% of those to produce your war equipment, but say they're all being traded, you can't say squat about that. You're sending them, they're going to be taken. You're going to have to then go and acquire them in a different means from another country by trading yourself. So once you get to a certain point, you can be hurt by losing your resources and having to trade your civilian factories, which are so precious. So it's just kind of a balance based on how many resources you have. If you can afford to send them all, or if you need to keep a tighter grip on your resources for military purposes. Economy law. This one's like really straightforward. The best economy law is war economy, and that's hands down. That doesn't matter whatsoever. Basically, what changes between all of these is you lose your consumer goods factories goes down. So as you go civilian to early to partial to war economy, and then actually total mobilization, you get some of your civilian factories back because they're not being used on consumer goods. Because when they're on consumer goods, basically they're just gone. They're out of the game. It doesn't affect anything. They're not being able to be used for your purposes because they're on consumer goods. They're too busy making Red Ryder BB guns or something like that. I'm not really sure. Basically, you want to move to that war economy. The other one that competes with it is total mobilization. That's because there's a greater buff to that construction speed for your military factories, but the negative is that you lose 3% of your recruitable population. So by all means, if you have tons and tons and tons of manpower, you can try for that, but this is going to be the best one on most cases. So moving down, these are just political advisors. They're all draw from the same pool. You just go in and pick which one is best for you. I like the ones that boost your production speed for your factories. If you want to change, a tip is if you want to change ideologies, a good thing to grab is whatever ideology revolutionary, because it'll help sway your country towards that. This down here is going to be research and production. So it's going to do all of them do -10 research time for whatever thing they are, tanks, navy, air, material, which is like infantry, artillery, stuff like that, and then industrial, just like industrial engineering, whichever one you want. And it's a research buff, as well as it gives you different buffs to whatever vehicles you choose, so you kind of get to go in and pick which you like to use and what you'd like to do. The theorist is actually extremely important. Basically, what you go in is you can do one theorist. It can be for the Army, Navy, or Air Force. It gives you 0.05 daily experience for that wing of the armed forces, and which is really good because you get to edit that force and make it more powerful and make them stronger via that experience. And it also gives you research buff for the doctrines for that type. So honestly, when doing this, I would definitely pick a Army theorist, just because in most times, not saying always, but in most times the Army does most of the heavy lifting for the wars, so to give them that extra buff is actually really quite nice. And then the bottom is military staff, pretty self-explanatory. You get one for the Army, one for the Navy, and one for the Air Force, just chiefs. They just give buffs for that each individual wing. And then you have 3 military high commands, and these, again, grabbed from a mixed pool, and they have all 3 different types, Navy, Air Force, or Army. And basically you just get to pick whatever kind of buffs you want for your armed forces, and then they're going to give them for you. So that pretty much does it for the political screen, guys. If you like the content, I am going to be rolling out more Hearts of Iron 4. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.